This explosion triggers a real earthquake. This is a second Hiroshima you've never heard of. And this spot of light can completely destroy not only the Earth, but also the entire solar system. From different parts of our planet to far corners of space. Get ready to see the most powerful and terrifying explosions ever caught on camera. Accidental detonations are always unexpected. The residents of the Mexican city of Tultepec have produced one thing without which we cannot imagine a great celebration. Nah, this isn't about tequila. On December 20, 2016, a young vendor went to the San Pablito market for lunch while the goods for sale continued to bask in the sun. In any other case, they would have just started to stew, causing disaster. But the thing is, for the last 200 years, the people of Tultepec have made a living from fireworks production. On that fateful day, a whopping 300 tons of pyrotechnics went off at once. 40 people died at the scene of the accident and more than 80 were injured. The explosion was so powerful that the market was completely destroyed. It took 2 years to rebuild it. Local authorities claim that after this fatal negligence, sellers are now taking much more care of their goods and their storage. But who can guarantee there will never be another terrible fireworks tragedy? The residents of this small town in Canada didn't break a single safety rule and were still attacked by a fire monster. And that's no exaggeration. On July 6, 2013, around 1 a.m., the city suddenly heard a loud bang and a huge ball of fire swept through the streets. It was 3 times taller than the tallest downtown buildings, and its heat could be felt up to 2 kilometers away. People jumped out of the windows and tried desperately to escape. But then the monster reached the city sewers. Pillars of fire erupted from the water channels. A truly apocalyptic picture. Firefighters managed to approach the disaster area 20 hours later, and they had to take turns every 15 minutes because of the heat and toxic fumes. When they finally defeated the fire monster, 27 locals were found dead and the entire city center was practically destroyed. But what happened there? Turned out that the fire monsters come to life through an ordinary freight train. The train had mechanical problems and had only recently been repaired. However, the maintenance team had used epoxy-like material that didn't have the durability required. As a result, oil had accumulated in the centrifugal compressor housing for 7 months until it finally overheated. Any train in this case can catch fire. But on the night of July 6th, the boiler wagons were loaded with crude oil. Its release and explosion resulted in the huge fireball that destroyed the city. Just a month after the tragedy, the company that owned the railroad filed for bankruptcy. But sometimes accidental explosions are so violent that those responsible don't get off that easily. In 2016, the Chinese authorities arrested more than 50 Tianjin port executives and accused them of corruption and abuse of power. The manager of the local warehouse was sentenced to death. These are the consequences of human negligence that caused a real earthquake. Late in the evening of August 12, 2015, the local emergency services received a call reporting a major fire at one of the port's warehouses. Firefighters immediately rushed to the scene, but it quickly became apparent that they were completely powerless. The hearth was far too big, but the biggest and worst surprise was yet to come. At 11:30 a.m. local time, 2 massive explosions shook the port. Every living being within a kilometer radius died instantly and the blast wave shattered 6 kilometers from the blast-type window and panes. More than 200 people were killed. More than 12,000 cars were destroyed. China's National Earthquake Network even registered these explosions as magnitude 2.5 to 3 earthquakes. The energy was equivalent to 27 tons of TNT. That's more than the explosive power of Fat Man, the bomb that was once dropped on Nagasaki. All of this happened because a container of ammonium nitrate, a compound commonly used in bread making. Investigations later revealed that the storage temperature in the warehouse had been a few degrees above the allowable limit, so this scandalous negligence eventually led to this inevitable detonation. The port of Tianjin was rebuilt in just 6 months, but then, 5 years later, something very similar happened in Beirut, Lebanon. At that time, an ammonia nitrate explosion triggered a magnitude 3.5 earthquake. The blast killed at least 210 people and left about 300,000 others homeless. The ensuing protests forced the Lebanese government to resign. But if people are so reckless as to allow such horrific explosions, what are they capable of doing when they want to blow something up on purpose? Nuclear explosions are more terrifying and devastating than any other explosions you can imagine. On August 6, 1945, one of them destroyed the Japanese city of Hiroshima. The mushroom cloud rose to a height of 7 kilometers. That's just a little bit lower than Mount Everest. 80,000 people died in an instant. Some of them vanished without a trace, leaving only atomic shadows, body silhouettes burned into the city's surface forever. 3 days later, the city of Nagasaki was also bombed. At that time, the atomic mushroom towered 9 kilometers into the sky. The number of citizens who died from injuries and radiation sickness exceeded 140,000 people. These terrible explosions forced Imperial Japan to surrender to the United States in World War II. However, Little Boy and Fat Man are among the low-yield nuclear bombs. Their yield was 15 and 21 kilotons of TNT, respectively. The next generation of bombs were loaded with megatons. These are thermonuclear devices that require nuclear warheads to create a chain reaction in the second part of the bomb, increasing the total destructive power of the bomb over and over again. American scientists decided to test this type of weapon at a safe distance from their own territory and went to the Inuitak Pacific atolls. Little did they know that the consequences would be much worse than expected. On November 1, 1952, the military detonated the first thermonuclear bomb developed by the United States, Ivy Mike. It was probably really scary to see 10 megatons being released into the atmosphere. The mushroom cloud rose up to 37 kilometers above the ground. That's 4 times higher than the cloud in Nagasaki or Mount Everest. The blast drowned one of the atolls while the fallout spread 56 kilometers. The samples obtained after the explosion confirmed the existence of 2 new chemical elements, einsteinium and fermium. This result inspired the military and encouraged them to keep going. But the next time they made a serious mistake. The first test, codenamed Castle Bravo, was scheduled for March 1, 1954. No one could have imagined that an explosion in the middle of the vast ocean would later be called the Second Hiroshima. But why? The Castle Bravo nuclear device was designed to be less powerful than the Ivy Mike bomb, with a yield of less than 6 megatons. But the developers had miscalculated badly. The explosion was 2 to 5 times as powerful and had a yield of 15 megatons of TNT. The mushroom cloud sets a new all-time record as it rose nearly 45 kilometers, and the fallout from the devastated coral reefs crisscrossed hundreds of kilometers beyond the test site. He met 23 crew members aboard the Daigo Fukuryu Maru, a Japanese tuna fishing boat. All the fishermen suffered from acute radiation sickness, and one of them eventually died. That's why the Japanese press dubbed the Castle Bravo test a second Hiroshima. The US government had to compensate the victims with $15 million. But the American scientists not only continued with the nuclear tests, but also decided to detonate another bomb 2 months after the tragic result. The fact that the new explosive device was similar in yield to Castle Bravo did not deter anyone. And although Castle Yankee turned out to be not all that massive, releasing only 13.5 megatons of TNT, it surprised its creators with other unexpected problems. 4 days after the detonation, radioactive fallout began to rain down on some parts of North America. Mexico City was hardest hit, although the capital is 15,000 kilometers from the test area. In the following years, the local hospitals recorded a high number of cancer cases. Meanwhile, on the other side of the planet, the Soviet Union was watching these advances closely and decided to beat the Americans in the nuclear arms race. On October 30, 1961, the USSR Armed Forces conducted a test of the most powerful nuclear weapon in history. Dropped on the Arctic island of Novaya Zemlya. It was called the Tsar bomb and had an explosive force of over 58 megatons. It's like 70 Fat Man bombs exploded over Nagasaki. The mushroom cloud rose to a height of 67 kilometers. The detonations of Fat Man and Little Boy, on the other hand, are insignificant. This devil's mushroom hat covered 7,000 square kilometers. This area could easily fit in Guangzhou, one of China's largest metropolitan areas. The explosion of the Tsar bomb was visible even from Norway, Greenland, and Alaska. And the shock wave it created circled the globe 3 times. This day proved the Soviet nuclear capacity and showed that there is almost no upper limit to the violent power of such weapons. For this reason, despite the still raging Cold War, the nations of the world that possessed nuclear weapons soon agreed to ban most of these tests. But even the largest man-made explosions are nothing compared to what nature can produce, or the universe to be precise. Some of the most stunning explosions happen very close to Earth, which is why our telescopes keep spotting them. Jupiter not only impresses skygazers with its legendary Great Red Spot, but also shows them signs of brutal attacks from space. By sheer luck, one of them was captured by Japanese astronomers in 2021. At first glance, this flash seems incredibly tiny, but don't forget that Jupiter's diameter is 11 times larger than Earth's. That means this little thing is almost as big as our planet. Its temperature reached 8,000 degrees Celsius, which is hotter than the surface of the Sun. And for a few seconds, the flash itself was 300 times brighter than our star. This memorable performance was provided by an asteroid little more than 30 meters in diameter. A typical Monday on Jupiter. In 2009, astronomers filmed an asteroid half a kilometer in diameter crashing into it. Nothing special, an explosion equivalent to 5 billion tons of TNT. That's like having 85 Tsar bombs explode at the same time. After that impact, scientists discovered a new black speck the size of the Pacific Ocean that stayed there for a very long time. Had that asteroid crashed into the Pacific Ocean, we would have been swept away by megatsunamis. It's time to thank Jupiter for having these dangerous space rocks all to itself. This gas giant saved us from a real planet killer, Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9, back in 1994. Jupiter tore the comet apart and didn't let it shower us with 22 fragments. The largest fragment has a diameter of 2 kilometers. That's 4 times the size of the asteroid seen in 2009. Jupiter's atmosphere heated up to 30,000 degrees Celsius near the impact site. Only blue supergiants have such a temperature, and their radius is larger than the distance Jupiter travels in its orbit around the Sun. The comet also exploded with a flash that rivals the brightest stars in the universe. Several months after the collision, we could see long dark patches in Jupiter's clouds. They stayed there despite all the active atmospheric currents. Before you thank the brave cinematographers for their fantastic work, let's first get their names. The most powerful explosions on Jupiter have been recorded by the robotic spacecraft Galileo and Ulysses. But if lightning can be more blinding on this planet than on the Sun, what could happen on the Sun itself in an explosion in space? On July 14, 2000, France celebrated, as always, its important national holiday, the day of the storming of the Bastille. But alongside the colorful fireworks, there was also an unseen explosion in the sky that definitely spoiled the festive spirit. The thing is, on the eve of the holiday, a giant sunspot spewed a cloud of magnetized plasma right onto Earth. When it hit our planet's magnetic field, it unleashed a major geomagnetic storm. This, in turn, led to power outages in several regions of France, leaving citizens unable to get the latest news or even know what was happening. Battery-powered receivers didn't help. This geomagnetic storm even disrupted the radio signals. The number of heart attacks and strokes increased by 90% on that dreadful day. But if I had to pick one that suffered the most from the National Day solar storm, it was Japan's Advanced Satellite for Cosmology and Astrophysics astronomy mission. The magnetic disturbance damaged the control system on board, and the scientists didn't notice the catastrophic changes, and then they did, but by then it was too late. As a result, the costly mission was slung into orbit. In 2003, the Sun decided to piss off astronomers and unleashed a storm right on Halloween Eve. We still don't know how powerful that solar flare actually was. because the gauges that gave us this information stopped at the maximum possible value. But we can imagine the force of the eruptions if we consider how fast the magnetized plasma jets traveled from the Sun to the Earth. It took them just 19 hours to travel instead of the usual 2 or 3 days. Airports around the world have had to cancel hundreds of flights because of the geomagnetic storm. In Scandinavia, too, it caused a system failure that led to widespread power outages. The flows of charged particles have significantly damaged our planet's ozone layer in the polar zones. And it took her a long time, 8 months, to recover. But worst of all, during the Halloween storms, several hospitals reported a sudden spike in child deaths and no one knows why. Scientists believe that a relatively large explosion on the Sun could spell the end of our civilization, which depends so much on electronics. However, deep and distant space may hold an apocalypse for us at any moment. Researchers often discover massive explosions outside our solar system that bear little resemblance to what we know. These outbursts can only be compared to the Big Bang that gave birth to the universe. In 1604, the German astronomer Johannes Kepler saw something extraordinary in the sky. He saw a star in the constellation of Eurus that hadn't been there before and carefully charted it. Here it is marked with the letter N. Kepler thought he was lucky to witness the birth of a new star, but it soon faded. 4 centuries later, the Hubble telescope just caught some strange blobs of material in this part of the sky. What Kepler saw was not the birth of a star. It was the catastrophic death of an old star. When a massive blue giant runs out of fuel, it not only disappears, it explodes with the brightness of billions of suns visible across space. But even though we now know what this phenomenon is, we continue to call these explosions nova and supernova, just like Kepler. In truth, humans had noticed interstellar cataclysms before, and they didn't even have telescopes. Our scientists believe this cave painting, found in India, dates back to 3600 BC and depicts nothing less than a supernova explosion. Even the Star of Bethlehem could be a supernova. This means that these explosions in space could have affected human history in a special way. When a supernova explodes in the Alpha Centauri star system, 4.5 light-years from Earth, it would be a magnificent display of light. Within a few days, the shock wave will reduce our planet to rubble. That's like detonating the entire stockpile of nuclear warheads in the world some 100 times in a row. Luckily for us, there are no dangerous stars that could go supernova near Earth. But scientists occasionally discover such things in other galaxies. In the past 20 years, Hubble has recorded 5 supernova explosions in a galaxy called NGC 5468, located 140 million light-years from Earth. The effects of the explosion look impressive, even from such an amazingly long distance. This bubble is many times larger than our solar system. But aesthetics aren't the main reason why scientists keep filming supernovas here. A remarkable explosion occurred at the edge of this galaxy, 70 million light-years from us. A white dwarf had absorbed matter from a neighboring star until fusion reactions occurred on its surface. The subsequent explosion threw matter into space at about 18,000 kilometers per second. That's 90,000 times faster than the speed of our jet planes. A bolt of lightning 5 billion times brighter than the Sun has struck the universe, and that's important. Such Type 1a supernovas always have about the same luminosity, which allows astronomers to accurately measure and even calculate distances in space. How fast the universe is expanding. In 2016, scientists managed for the first time to record a unique and exotic sequence of a supernova explosion in the galaxy Centaurus A. This is the so-called light echo. Looks like circles on the water. The astronomer Louis Galbani suspects that such waves transport carbon, iron and heavier elements through space at high speeds. And do not forget that we owe our physical existence to these very substances. But even the impact that supernovas have on the universe appears to be less profound. When you hear about other space explosions. In the 1960s, U.S. military satellites observed the eruptions that appeared on the surface of the Earth as a result of the Soviet nuclear tests and quite unexpectedly received a signal coming from a surprising source in space. That was a gamma-ray burst. There were only a few spots on the tape, but they were enough to leave astronomers speechless. Had the Americans sent someone near the source to record it, the footage would have shown a black hole or neutron star collision. Generated narrow emission as bright as hundreds of supernovas. Experts observed one of the strongest gamma-ray bursts not long ago. On October 9, 2022, and although Earth is almost 2.5 billion light-years from the site of the explosion, it still hit us. Nitrogen molecules in the upper atmosphere began to split into ions under the influence of gamma rays. At the same time, critical bugs appeared in radio navigation systems. Had this deadly ray struck Earth at close range in our galaxy, the consequences would have been quite devastating. Paleontologists suspect that 450 million years ago a gamma-ray burst caused the late Ordovician mass extinction event. At that time, for unknown reasons, more than 85% of all species suddenly became extinct. Unfortunately, unlike solar storms, there is no way to predict a deadly gamma-ray burst as it zooms through space at the speed of light. It may be that a frightening outbreak has already taken place and the consequences are just on their way. And when they catch up with us, half of the Earth directly facing the shove would turn into one big photographic film. But while we're still alive, scientists plan to watch an interstellar event live. Betelgeuse. A red supergiant will soon go supernova. By soon, I mean any moment in the next 100,000 years. A blink of an eye. I'm not sure about you, but I'd really like to have a picture of me standing in front of two suns shining in the background of the sky. That would be exactly the effect if Betelgeuse would produce when it goes supernova. And if we have to wait a few more 1,000 years, who knows, maybe by then people will find a way to send cameramen there and capture footage of space explosions. Would you like to do this job? As always, let us know your thoughts, suggestions, and feedback on today's video in the comments below. Also remember to give us a like and subscribe when you have the opportunity so you never miss a post again, and thanks for watching. Have fun and see you next time.